I'm Charlie Bright of Gold Derby, and today I'm speaking with Liz Garbus, the Oscar-nominated and Emmy-winning director of the HBO docuseries "I'll Be Gone in the Dark." The first question I wanted to ask is: at what point during this were you aware at any point during this project that uh, police were getting close to apprehending the Golden State Killer, and at what point did you become aware of that?
I wish I could say we were, and I'm sure if Michelle were still alive and had been tracking the case and making this documentary alongside of us, she would have had her spider sense, and we would have all had the heads up. But that was not the case. Um, Actually, we got the galleys of the book. And had met with Patton and had decided to collaborate with HBO, and it was our first. Well, HBO gave us the galleys. I shouldn't say decide to collaborate. HBO brought us the project, and it was our first shooting day. We were in Chicago. We were in the Chicago area to meet Michelle's family, and Patton and Billy and Paul, who are two of the co-authors, along with Michelle of "I'll Be Gone in the Dark," her book, were giving a talk, and we just thought, you know what? We'll shoot this talk. We'll get to know the family. It was our dipping our toes in the pool, and we all went back to our hotels that night. And at 6 or something, I had to wake up for a flight, and I saw my phone had blown up with texts. And we learned really early that morning that a suspect had been arrested. We rushed to get our cameras and meet Patton in the lobby and continue to follow with him that day. But yeah, with Billy and Paul, it was a pretty amazing way to start the project, and also to be there with Patton, learning that this perp was caught without Michelle was really sad, and also happy. Not the without the Michelle part happy, but the that he was caught part. And Yeah, so that's how our whole series began, with that period at the end of that sentence of who was the Golden State Killer.
So, did you say that it was HBO that approached you about making this documentary?
Correct. HBO had gotten wind of the book, had seen the manuscript, and then ultimately shared that with me, to think about turning it into a doc. I met with Patton because what I wanted to understand, I mean, what struck me about the book was, of course, this you know in, incredible story of this crime spree, but also the survivors of these crimes, and the sort of the interviews with them and their experiences and the way Michelle had gotten to know them. But also this voice of Michelle McNamara. I did not know about her as a writer. I hadn't read the magazine pieces that preceded this book, but I just thought she was the next Truman Capote. She was just a phenomenal literary nonfiction crime writer. And so I wanted to know from Patton, what else did he have? What kind of archive was there? Because I really wanted I wanted our viewers to feel like we were on this journey with Michelle. And when he told us he had all these audio cassettes, and of course these video recordings she had made, and all of her emails investigating the case and her text messages, I felt like there was a really special opportunity to, kind of feel like we were living alongside this woman as we got to investigate this case.
So you're talking. This actually segues into my next question perfectly. When you first started work on this project and started, digging and doing all your research about this, what about Michelle McNamara stood out the most to you?
I relate so much to Michelle. I feel like, at this point, I feel like I got to know her. And Of course, I didn't, but I feel like we would have been friends. Michelle, and then it turned out, as sort of life unfolded, that we had these mutual friends. Like, maybe I could have met her had things unfolded differently one night in LA. But Michelle, as I mentioned before, we had this extraordinary um, literary approach to the stories, always putting the survivors first, always that search for answers, not because, and rather than an interest in the salacious details, um, such a keen eye for detail and psychology. Her voice was just incredible. I also related to her as just like a working mom who was, balancing, and she talked about it. She was like, Cheerio feeding the toddler by day and like hunting the serial killer at night, and I am a working mom and I really related to that, to those dual passions. And of course, Patton is an extremely loving and present father, but he would also be on the road sometimes. And, I certainly related to how much that was to hold for Michelle, those dual obsessions of your child and your passion project. I related to so much of that.
So I was curious about, do you know if Patton has actually seen the series? And if so, what was his reaction to it?
Yeah, Patton has seen the series. Patton was our executive producer, and we, always kept him closely informed on our, um, on our moves, on what we were doing. And he certainly helped us get in touch with people we were looking for when we couldn't find them on our own. Provided lists of Michelle's friends who he thought would, give great insight, which indeed they did. Ultimately, when we shared a rough cut with Patton, I was, of course, completely nervous. I mean, the series is not, as it's about the search for this killer, but it's also about this relationship between a man and a woman, the struggles that they had that, all of us relate to when you're balancing work and family. And also, of course, Michelle's use of prescription drugs, and none of that is easy. And so, I definitely had anxiety sharing with Patton. But Patton was just wonderful. He basically said, like, Liz, I couldn't have asked for anything more. I could never have imagined this, and I could never have asked for anything more. And he really, like, other than feeling like he was maybe too much in it, and were there points at which we could maybe take him out, but he never was specific, don't use this, don't use that. I think it was just more like, this isn't about me. So other than that, he just completely, gave his blessing, and it was hands off. And that was really just an extraordinary trust, that I hope I think he feels was rewarded.
One of the other things I think is so striking in that movie, in the series, is towards the end, the garden party that we see. And I can't remember, what was the name of the survivor who organized that.
Chris Pedretti.
Yes, was that all her idea? And what was it like to film this sort of reunion for people who had all been targeted by the same person?
That's, that I agree. That was one of the more, the really special scene and event in the series. Chris, wanted to organize this gathering. We had said we wanted to film it. There were some survivors who were not comfortable with being filmed. So, that was a little bit of a negotiation, but ultimately most folks were. And so it went forward. I think at the end of the day that what this series is about is the need to talk about trauma and process it. Michelle had her own trauma as a young woman, also, questioning an assault that happened, a sexual assault that happened in her background, and kind of pushing it down, and it kind of starting to percolate again. These survivors of the Golden State Killer rapes were told by their parents. A 16-year-old girl told, don't talk about this. You're not allowed to be on the phone tonight. And this, some 40 years later, being able to go out in your backyard with dozens and dozens of people, not to mention the documentary film crew, and be open about this. It was so revolutionary for them. And, and silence is, the way to let that, trauma metastasize and become a cancer. And, one of the things Patton said that I thought was so smart was like, Joseph DeAngelo, he had trauma in his childhood, terrible trauma. And he became this monster. And these people had trauma, and they overcame it. And and so did Michelle for a long time. And I think that at the end of the day, that's kind of what this is about, this show. And so the garden party, in that sense, was the total culmination of all of those themes.
So, I can imagine that it can be very tough sometimes to capture something with the documentary, especially if, you even with all the resources that Michelle left behind, you're not able to ask her questions. Was there any aspect of the story that you found very difficult to capture?
Such a good question. Well, thankfully there had been some documentary projects that had been started and then aborted, and we were able to get these interviews. You see them in the film of Michelle talking about her work. Of course, Michelle did a lot of podcast interviews, a lot of Zoom interviews like this, and we had all of that. So yes, I didn't get to ask her questions, or my co-directors didn't get to ask her questions, but we really had a lot of great Michelle. And then of course we had the book, which is so great. And we had, she did, it's a lot of reading of the book for well, when it was a magazine article. She didn't live to see the book published, but when some of it was in an article that she was able, that she read, and we had her recording. And then we had the great actress, Amy Ryan, read those passages. So I really felt like we had, a tremendous wealth of material. We just announced that we're releasing a bonus episode in a couple of weeks. And, one of the things we didn't get to talk about in the series that we were always trying to fit in there, you have this 6 episodes, and you have these huge maps and these index cards and these Miro boards, and you're moving everything around. And this story of this white whale in Michelle's life, this origin story of a crime, of a murder of a young woman in her Oak Park neighborhood outside of Chicago, which just always haunted her, and that unsolved crime. We couldn't find the right place for it, even in all these 6 hours. So we did release this bonus episode because, of course, also we wanted to update the series with the sentencing of Joseph D'Angelo. So we've released this bonus episode, which weaves those 2 stories. So I do feel that we got it in there, and that because of Patton's generosity, we were able to really tell the story in a full way.
I actually forgot that. I forgot for a second there that Amy Ryan was the actress who was voicing the words of Michelle McNamara. How did you land on Amy Ryan to do this? Was it just like a regular auditioning process, or did you have her in your mind for that?
Well, I directed a film called Lost Girls, which is on Netflix. Was premiered at Sundance last year and is now on Netflix. And it is a story actually of a mother whose daughter is murdered. It's based on a true story, on a great book of true crime, beautiful true crime book by Bob Kolker called Lost Girls. And Amy was my protagonist. She played the mother. And Amy's just a tremendous actor. Is a friend. She also knew Patton. It's just, and she works, she really just cared so much about this project, listened to everything of Michelle. And it was just, perfect to bring Amy in for this.
Well, Liz, thank you so much for joining us. We wish you all the best over this upcoming Emmy season. And to all of our viewers, please like this video, smash that subscribe button, and don't forget to go to goldderby.com and use the Gold Derby app to make your predictions and see if you can outsmart the top prognosticators in Hollywood. Thanks so much, Liz.
Thank you, Charlie.